Welcome to the Ward 3 Budget Town Hall meeting. My name is Michael Fabricant, Mayor Gray's Ward 3 liaison. I am also a proud Alice Deal Junior High School alumni, raised right here in Ward 3. Thank you all for coming tonight. I want to recognize the Mayor's Cabinet, Community Affairs Director Steve Glaudet, Office of Neighborhood Engagement Director Francisco Fimbris, and Deputy Director Letitia Atkins. Last but not least, a big thank you to Alice Deal's staff, including Assistant Principal Neal and Mr. Myers for their fantastic work in hosting us this evening, as well as the staff, teachers, and Principal Albright for their commitment to our youngsters. I'm honored to work for Mayor Gray in Ward 3. Mayor Gray, thank you for your commitment to Ward 3 and our beloved city. Continuing the practice Mayor Gray started when he took office almost 3.5 years ago, he will brief the district ward by ward on his proposed budget for the upcoming year. As he presents his proposed FY15 budget tonight, you will see a budget that is thoughtful, progressive, and compassionate. I believe you will see a budget which not only invests in, but actually seizes the opportunities of the future for the district and its residents. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Vincent C. Gray.
Thank you very much, Michael, and good evening, everybody. We're delighted to be here. I want to thank the Chair of ANC 3D, Gail Trotter. I want to thank Matt Fruman. I want to thank Jim McCarthy. I want to thank the Glover Park Citizens Association and the Ward 3 Democratic Committee for serving as co-hosts for tonight. Many of you know we have a new Chief Financial Officer, and he is with us tonight. Dr. Gandhi used to make this pilgrimage with us every year also. And just think about it, Jeff, there's only 6 more of these to go after tonight. Anyway, we're delighted to have Jeff DeWitt as the Chief Financial Officer. And he is with us, as I indicated, tonight. And I want to give him a chance to come up and introduce himself to those who may not have met him as yet. He is from Phoenix, Arizona. And has a sterling reputation as a financial leader. And I'm delighted to have been a part of the selection process. I guess I was a selection process, wasn't I, at the end of the day. Anyway, I think we've made a good choice in Jeff. He's already hit the ground running, and I want to give you a chance to meet him and hear a few words from him as we start tonight's presentation. Jeff DeWitt.
You're a bit taller than I am. Thank you, Mayor, for the kind words. As the Mayor mentioned, I came from Phoenix, Arizona, where I spent 25 years. I was a CFO in Phoenix, Arizona during the Great Recession, where they lost half of their property tax base. So it's a lot better when you're looking at a budget. You're not cutting 25%. You're looking at the opportunity to add important programs to the District of Columbia. It's been an honor following Dr. Gandhi, who, as Mayor Gray said, was here for 13.5 years, and all the opportunities to meet the great people of the District of Columbia. I lived near 3rd and 8th Street, and am absolutely loving the city and all the opportunities, including last weekend getting the opportunity to see the cherry blossoms for the first time ever here, and have actually fallen in love with the city. I think you'll see when the Mayor does his presentation in a few minutes, you'll see a situation where the reserves have been built up over the last few years. That's given you the opportunity to do things like this beautiful school that we're in today. And you'll see issues like better schools, affordable housing, and issues like that. One of the things as I came into the district, looking at the revenue forecast that was part of this budget, you'll see things like the district has become a place to live, not just a place to work. And the opportunities to have better schools, affordable housing, and things like that, that's what given us the income growth that we have and what's been going on to do a lot of the programs you're going to see from the Mayor tonight. So it is a great honor to have that opportunity to come from Phoenix, Arizona, and be the Chief Financial Officer for the District of Columbia. There's really no better place to be, in spite of the fact that you may have read the paper that I got my first opportunity to be to be sued by the council today. So, so I guess the honeymoon's over, as they say. But anyway, it is a pleasure working with the mayor and all the council and all the opportunities that are here. And thank you, Mayor, so much for the opportunity to be the CFO for the District of Columbia.
You know, I'm glad that Jeff mentioned the litigation. Litigation is, I suppose, by definition, adversarial, but if there's anything that's not adversarial, it's the litigation that was filed today by the council. The mayor was sued, that would be me, and the CFO was sued, that would be him. And the effort is designed to try to get to an answer on whether the referendum that was approved by the populace in the District of Columbia, and whether the associated law really has effect, and it's important to be able to get to an answer. There are some who believe that it is effective. There are others who believe that it is not in effect. And I happen to be one of those who is dubious. And why that's really important at this stage is because we are already into this budget period. We are into a period right now where the council has the budget. It was transmitted on April 3rd, which means, what's the date, the 17th? That means we're 14 days into this. And there's some really serious questions that need to be answered. For example, is it a 56-day period now, or is it a 70-day period, as the council would suggest by the schedule that they published? Will there be 2 votes on the Budget Request Act, which the Home Rule Charter says, or is it 1 vote, I mean, as the Home Rule Charter would say, or 2 votes, as the Act would say? And those are decisions that need to be made now. And Chairman Mendelson and I have had numerous conversations about this issue in a very, by the way, professional manner. And we haven't come to an agreement on it. I, by the way, voted for this in hopes that it would be in fact effective, but we'll find out. The CFO, the Attorney General, and myself all have one position on this issue. The council and their attorneys have another position on the issue. But where we don't differ at all is a commitment to budget autonomy. We all believe that the District of Columbia ought to be able to make decisions for itself in terms of the money that's generated by the people of the District of Columbia, and then how that money is spent. So there is no difference on that issue. I think we have a difference of opinion on the path to get there. For those of you who read the GAO position, then you know what I'm talking about. If you've read Irv Nathan's opinion, then you know what I'm talking about. If you heard me talk about it, I certainly am at best dubious about this approach. But what I'm not dubious about, and that is that the people of the District of Columbia, we ought to be able to make the decisions ourselves on how our money is spent. And I've tried to demonstrate that in a variety of ways. So the complaint, if you will, was filed in Superior Court today, and it will go from here. We hope to get a quick decision so that we're not forced into this really untenable situation of trying to figure out for ourselves whether it's 56 days, whether it's 70 days, whether it's 1 vote, whether it's 2 votes, and the other associated issues. And if a court of competent jurisdiction can help us make that decision, it will be far the better. You know, whatever the decision is, we will work to try to make it work, period. And I feel comfortable. In fact, I just left Phil. I think he's probably he won't be here tonight because he was heading to another meeting. But he's going to come out to 1 or more of these town hall meetings. It'll be a chance for the 2 of us then to speak to this. So was talking to Dan Solomon earlier, and I want to assure everybody else too that Phil and I were not out back, with fists balled up, trying to punch each other out in the course of this. We don't have that kind of relationship, and I think we both agree that this was a constructive approach to get to an answer as to whether this is lawful or not, recognizing that at the end of the day, we both heartily share exactly the same goal, and that is to be able to have a way in which the people of this city can determine how we spend our money. The theme for this year's budget is keeping the promises, and that is essentially carrying out the things that we've talked about now for over 3 years and making sure that we continue on those themes. Secondly, we are committed to having a structurally sound budget, which means that when it's structurally sound, it means that we're not spending money that doesn't come in the door. We have committed ourselves to saying we will only spend what comes in the door. So if $10 came in the door, the budget would not be for more than $10. But we are projected to get more than $10, right? Right, Jeff? It does not have us dipping into the fund balance. Also, we're preserving our 12% debt cap that will bump up against that in the out years, but that will probably change as we go along as well. And happily so, there are no new taxes and no new fee increases in the budget in order to get it balanced. I want to acknowledge here, in addition to Jeff and his team that worked with us on this, I want to acknowledge also our budget director who heads the Mayor's Office on Budget and Finance, and that's Eric Goulet. Eric, who is a resident of Ward 3. Thank you, Eric. And with him also is a gentleman who is the guru on our capital projects. He is the director of our capital program, and that is John McGaw. John, thank you so much for what you've done as well. Now, this next chart that you see up there, I call it Gandhi's chart. This thing goes back to 1992, which predates even, Dr. Gandhi in the city. What it shows is where the bank account was each one of those years. And as you see, in the mid to late 90s, it was in pretty bad shape. It was less than zero and reached its really low point when it got down to having less than a zero, having a deficit of $518 million. And then when Anthony Williams became the mayor, it started to go back up and went up and went up and went up tremendously to reach a point where it got to $1.5 billion. And then in the years after that, it went down. In fact, it reached a really precarious point where we were projected to go to $705 million because the budget was being balanced on the basis of reaching into the bank account to use money from the bank account to balance it. And then in 2011, we came along, and I'm happy to report that it has been going up and going up tremendously. We are now at 1 3/4, $1.75 billion in the bank, and it is the highest amount that we have had in the fund balance in the history of the District of Columbia. We are working towards trying to meet the Government Finance Officers Association standard of having 60 days of cash in the bank. I think we're around 44, 45, 46 days at this stage, so we're about 3/4 of the way there. And we think in a couple of years that it can be accomplished by the city, at which stage we've made a commitment that any surpluses that will be generated thereafter will go in certain directions. One direction will be, and we'll talk more about this, and that is half of any surpluses after we get to the 60-day point would go into affordable housing, which is a huge need for the District of Columbia. So with that having been said, let's take a quick look at the baseline budget. Thank you for putting this slide in. It's a good one to talk about. When we came in, the first budget that we did for this administration, we had a projected gap of $322.1 million, which essentially means that in order to keep doing the same things that we were doing the previous year, changing nothing, that we would have had to come up with another $322.1 million. And we didn't have that kind of money. So we had to make cuts. We introduced, I think, some tax increases. We did a number of things in order to balance the budget. But what is exciting, frankly, is to look at what's happened in the years since. The next year after that, the projected gap went down to $172 million. The year after that, 14, which is the current year, when we started this process, it was projected to be $79.3 million, and the projected gap for next year was almost nothing, and that is $2.7 million. And in fact, that was projected before we got the revenue projection in February, when the CFO said, you guys can look for another $139 million coming in the door. So it gave us the opportunity to really do a number of things we wanted to do. And by the way, this took some real work, some real effort, and I want to thank all of those who work with me every day, who manage these agencies, who got us to the point where we don't have now these spending pressures. In fact, we don't even talk about spending pressures anymore because people are managing within the dollars that they have available to them. And I think we had one spending pressure so far this year, and that was snow. And that figures, where's Bill? There he is. I want to thank Bill for doing a great job in helping to get the snow off the streets this year. It was Bill and DDOT, and Matt Brown is here representing DDOT tonight, working together. We had, I think, either 27 or 28 separate snow events since November 1st. Not all of which were major, but enough of them were major to be able to create a real challenge for us here in the District of Columbia. So guys got the snow up, and now we have all the potholes to show for it. Because, you know, when you get that kind of snow, and usually the chemicals that we use, it leaves your streets in a very precarious situation. But I was talking to Alan and Matt today, and in the last week, last week, you all have filled, last 10 days, they filled 4,000 potholes in the District of Columbia, which is not bad. And some of them shouldn't be called potholes, they should be called pot craters. I mean, they are huge, man. Go down on Florida Avenue, which we were talking about today, in the 600 block of Florida Avenue Northwest, and ride through there. It is quite a challenge, but they made that may already have been filled, but it is going to be filled if it hasn't been already. And in fact, the street will be repaved in that block as well, and you're seeing already repaving taking place. Anyway, the local fund budget. What are local funds? Those are the dollars that we raise ourselves from our what? The big three. From the property taxes, sales taxes, and that's right. April 15th was such a memorable day, right? For those of you who didn't get your taxes in, I hope you don't owe the government anything. In any event, our approved budget for the current fiscal year, our local budget from our money, is $6.35 billion, and most of these, and you'll see the sources shortly. The baseline expenses for 6.64, is that for 14 or 15? That's for 15. 15, yeah, 15. The total baseline expenses, $6.64 billion, and the current services funding level is $6.48 billion, which again, interpreting that fancy term, means that if you want to do the same things next year that you're doing this year, this is how much it will cost you to be able to do that. The technical adjustments, we won't go into that with any detail, and then there's a 4.5% increase in the 15 budget over the 14 budget. So the 15 budget is $6.79 billion. There are a number of new programs that we're proposing that will cost a net increase of $139 million. 2.3% over the 15 proposed is 2.3% of the 15 proposed budget. And then we have a population increase, for those who want to do those comparisons, of 2.1%. So it's spending 2.3% more because we got 2.1% more people. Now, if you want to draw the relationship there and you can figure out, you let me know, because there may be specious reasoning at work there. The next slide shows 2015 in terms of how the money is spent. The human services component always is the biggest piece. That's $4.34 billion and is 40% of the budget. And the biggest chunk of that is the Medicaid program. The Medicaid program is about, what is it, Eric? It's about $3 billion. Wayne, about $3 billion for the Medicaid program. And how much? 3.7. 2.7. Okay, 2.7. Okay, so about $3 billion. And then the rest of it's a variety of human services that are provided to our folks. Second biggest area is public education, which is 20% or $2 billion. So when you put human services and education together, they equal 60% of the budget for the city. And the rest of it, public safety is $1 billion. Public Works, $0.7 billion or $700 million. And, you know, maybe the biggest bargain in town is economic development, where we spend $500 million and they generate a huge chunk of the money that comes in the door for the city. Now, where's the money come from? Over 70% of it is generated from our local funds. I've already talked about that, the big three. And then we, of course, get a lot of federal money. But we get our federal money the same way that everybody else does. Medicaid is a federal program. We have federal grants that we get money, money for or from. And then federal payments, which include things like education, and there's, some other stuff that we get federal payments for. But the lion's share of the money we get about 30% from the federal government, 71% from our local funds, and then the biggest chunk of that from the federal government is Medicaid. Now, there are 4 pillars to this budget this year. Continuing improvements in public education, additional investments in affordable housing, encouraging economic and workforce development, and then the catch-all, the umbrella, is improving the quality of life for everybody in the District of Columbia. So let me turn first to public education. We are proposing to invest in public education over and above what we are spending this year, another $116 million. We conducted something called an adequacy study that was, it took a year or more, and it was designed to say, in order to be able to feel like we are investing the amounts that we should spend on public education, what is it that we are missing, and what kind of investments need to be made in order to do that. So of the $116 million, 112 will be going into the D.C. public schools and the public charter schools. And a big chunk of that now, remember, we have a 2% increase in the funding formula for students. So a big chunk of that is going into making sure we continue to increase the funding formula so that keeps pace. $60 million will be going into the adequacy study, assuming that this budget is adopted the way we have proposed it, and then another $4.2 million going into infant and toddler services. I will talk to anybody who will listen to me about early childhood education, and even if I think you're not listening, I'll still talk to you about it. I think we have the most robust early childhood education program in America, and this is yet another opportunity to make those investments. We have 70% of our 3-year-olds in school, and we have 92% of our 4-year-olds who are in school. And now we're investing money in 2 ways in infant and toddler programs. First, to increase the number of slots. We're adding more slots next year. And I'll talk a little bit more about how much more we could do if the wish list gets funded. And then secondly, to upgrade the quality of what we do in our infant and toddler programs. The rates have been increased so that the programs that provide these services will be able to hire people who have more credentials than folks have been in the past. You know, it used to be called daycare. It was like if you could get a good caring person who liked kids, then that was kind of okay. We've passed that stage. We're really talking about people who are developmental specialists at this stage, who understand what children, very young children, need in order to have a fair chance to get to the next place. We also are including an increase in the facilities allotment. We provide $3,000 a year to the charter schools per student that they serve. This will provide, I think, what is it, a 1% or 2% increase? 2% increase. So that $3,000 will go up to about $3,200. And then we are proposing to put a $1.6 billion for citywide school modernization. And what is really exciting is that we are projecting the highest enrollment in 25 years in public education. That would be our charter schools combined with our D.C. public schools. It has been a very long time since this city has had almost 87,000 students in public education. In fact, there was a day when DCPS alone had 150,000 students. This is a combination of charter schools, which will be about, I don't know, 38 or 39,000 students, and 48,000 students in DCPS. So that is exciting news. In addition to that, we're proposing to put $5 million to add more nurses to our schools. The middle schools will have an increased focus on areas that are mentioned there. Every student in the middle school will have exposure to technology, algebra, a foreign language, art, physical education, and music. And we don't have that right now. We have some schools that have some of those things. We don't have very many schools at all that have all of those things, and this will increase that opportunity. We also are proposing to open 9 career and technical education academies that each will serve 200 to 300 students. How many of y'all remember when we used to have so-called vocational education in our schools? Well, we're restoring it, but not like it used to be. This will be contemporary, consistent with the jobs that are being created in the city, and we've created about 34,000 jobs since we've been in office, but gearing students to jobs that are being created so that if they want to go to work after they finish the 12th grade and graduate, there'll be a job that they can go to, or a community college, or a 4-year school, or whatever the career education ladder may be. They'll be connected to jobs that are being created. And there are 3 areas: technology, construction, the career ladder in construction, and then hospitality. We are proposing to have $175,000 in this budget so that every 11th and 12th grader will be able to get the SAT test free of charge. Children should not be penalized in taking such an important test because their family may not have the wherewithal. So we're providing that free for everybody. And then we're opening a new DC Youth Engagement Center, which, among other things, is designed to be able to combat truancy in the District of Columbia. We also are moving to, this will be our 2nd year coming up for the lottery, the common lottery. And maybe, Abby, when we get through this, you can come up and explain how it works. I think it really has started to streamline the process, especially for those who are seeking a charter school, who used to have to apply separately for every charter school that they wanted to get into, and you could have 10, 15, 20 applications. This has people doing it through one portal, one approach, and a much more streamlined process. We're continuing funding for truancy prevention. A D.C. public library program called Sing, Talk, and Read, which is $400,000, and providing an inflation increase for the University of the District of Columbia of $1.3 million. A lot of investments. The capital improvement program, what is it, 6 years? It will take us through 2020. $174 million for high schools, $20 million for middle schools, $116 million for elementary schools, and $94 million for a variety of general improvements. Just so you know, we localize this a bit. These are the schools that are included for the 6-year capital improvement here in Ward 3. Rose, Reno, $15 million. Hearst, $34 million. Janney, $7 million. Horace Mann, $27.5 million. John Eaton, $11 million. And Murch, $40.4 million of an investment over the life of this capital improvement plan. That's Pillar 1. Pillar 2, additional investments in affordable housing. And we are proposing, we put $187 million into affordable housing about a year ago. That was approved by the council, and we've already gotten that money out the door. There are 47 projects that are being funded. This would add another $100 million to our commitment to affordable housing. And here's some of the ways in which it would be done. Almost $79 million through the Housing Production Trust Fund, which would largely be generated from the tax that is imposed, the deed recordation and transfer taxes in the District of Columbia. That's the 78.5. We're investing in a property tax program. Councilmember Anita Bonds did legislation which I happily signed, and what that does is basically 3 things. It says that if you meet 3 criteria: 1, being at least 70 years of age; secondly, not having an adjusted gross income of more than $60,000 a year; and having owned a home for 20 consecutive years. And we're making some tweaks on that. Yeah. What are the tweaks, Eric? You want to mention them real quickly?
Thank you. The 2 small tweaks that the mayor made to the council's legislation are to allow for up to 2 periods of 120 days. So if someone in purchasing a new home has to sell their old home and there's a gap of time, they don't lose the entire benefit of the tax credit. So over that 20 years, if they sell a property and then buy a new one, if there's any sort of gap that's shorter than 120 days, they're still eligible for the full credit. So that was the change the mayor made.
All right. We think that that's yet another way to come at affordability, because people meeting those criteria will be exempt from paying property taxes in the future. We also have $4.7 million being invested in a commitment to end veteran homelessness by 2015. We've gotten about, our best guess is that there were about 500 homeless veterans on the street. We think we've gotten half of them off. There's another half still out there in some form or fashion, and the commitment is to get those folks off the street over the next year. An investment of $4 million in the local rent supplement program vouchers, $3 million of which will go to individuals and families, and $1 million will go to low-income seniors. And then $1.3 million being invested into the low-income heat energy assistance program. Yeah, home assistance energy program. Right, LIHEAP. And this will allow us to, by investing $1 in the utilities, to give people maximum opportunity for federal benefits that they can get to. Secondly, the next slide is, we've just started, we launched it officially today, a program to do more with our homeless families. Undoubtedly, everybody in the Western Hemisphere has followed this one. We had, at its peak, we had well over 700 families in shelter this winter. We have an obligation to serve everybody who comes in during hypothermia season. What is hypothermia season? It means when the temperatures drop below 32 degrees. And we had that the other night, didn't we? And I think we added another 14 or 15 families as a result of that. But anyway, the numbers are starting to come down. We're down to under 700 now. We're down to 650 or something like that, 660. The idea is to get 500 families out over the next 100 days, which is a tall order, but we had a kickoff today with Deputy Mayor Otero, with David Burns, who's our Director of Human Services. And our appeal today was to ask people, there were housers who came out to this meeting, and we were asking them to make units available. We're not asking anybody to do anything free. We are using our rapid rehousing program. We spend $120 million now on services to people who are homeless. We're simply trying to figure out a better, more effective, more efficient way to be able to spend those dollars as we move forward. So if we're fortunate to be able to do this the way we want to, we will have 500 families less by the end of June here in the District of Columbia. 500 families less in shelter. We're putting $1 million to increase the ERAP program, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and another $1 million to increase rapid rehousing. There's also a piece to that, too, for those of you who are connected in some way with the faith community. We're asking our faith community to step up, be they, be they churches, be they synagogues, be they mosques, to step up and say we will take on a commitment to assist at least one family. And I'm sure we have 700 different, congregations in the District of Columbia. And what are we asking people to do? Just simply do something in the context of your social justice mission. Literally and figuratively put your arms around these families and help them. What's astounding is about half the families who are in shelter, the head of the family, if you will, is somebody who is 24 years of age or younger. So we're talking about people who are children themselves, who may never have managed an apartment, may never have managed a household, may never have managed money. And the failure, we can put them into an apartment, we can do all the things that we want to do, but the failure to put them in a situation where they can get the kind of assistance they need with managing money and managing a family and managing a home, and it's just a question of then projecting what day will they wind up being evicted and right back in shelter again. So we're trying to prevent that with the One Family, One Congregation program. We're putting $300,000 into a new home ownership campaign in Wards 7 and 8, and $250,000 in emergency housing funding in the Office of the Tenant Advocate. The third pillar of the four is encouraging economic and workforce development. We are proposing to invest $4.2 million in adult job training, $2.5 million in workforce development at the, this is on top of the 1.3, at our community college. We have, by the way, for the first time in the history of this city, a real comprehensive workforce development system. It's the career and technical education programs that I talked about earlier. It is the community college. It is the Department of Employment Services. It is the Workforce Investment Council, which was essentially dormant when we came into the office 3 years ago. And it's the workforce intermediaries, which are helping to bridge the gap between people and jobs. We have now, I see Nick sitting in the second row there, we have what I think will be music to the ears of a lot of business folks, and that is bringing together in one, this is a result of the work that he and David Goldblatt did on the regulatory reform task force. And that was taking 8 agencies and creating one portal. People otherwise would have to go to 8 different agencies, creating one portal for them to be able to go through and apply, so they don't have to do but one application. Is that right, Nick? Which will be a major, major step forward. And that's what we're calling the One City Business Portal for applying for licenses and permits. The Strand, anybody in here know where the Strand Theater is? I got a few, huh? It's on the east end of the city, on Nannie Helen Burrs and Division Avenue. That theater has been, it's historic. It's been closed since 1959. Been closed so long there's a tree that is growing through the roof. Anyway, we already have started working to stabilize it and get it to a point where it's ready for development, which will be in a matter of weeks, months, if not weeks. And then we're continuing to invest money in a variety of ways in Walter Reed, the shops at Dakota Crossing, the Skyland Town Center, which took 28 years to get that to the point where it's ready to go, and the construction has actually started. St. Elizabeth's East Campus, and the Southwest Waterfront that we had the groundbreaking for just a few weeks ago. The final of the pillars is improving the quality of life for all people. Dr. Thompson, we're going to be an age-friendly city. Is that right? All right. And in doing so, we're investing another $2 million in our wellness centers, almost $500,000 in the commodity supplemental food program. We've added $3 million, which is a huge increase. That's more than double, right? So we were investing about $2.4 million. Now we're going to $6 million in transportation that will give our seniors a chance to get around the city in ways that they otherwise wouldn't. And also, we're going to do some things with the Metro Access program to streamline that. We're going to start using taxi cabs for people. The Metro Access program now costs $50 per trip. Using taxi cabs, which we'll pay for, will cost $15 a trip. Hey, by the way, how do you all like the new colors on the taxi cabs? We're rapidly moving towards having a real presence. I think we must have now 1,500 to a couple thousand of our 5,000 or 6,000 taxi cabs that have a uniform color. It's strange to see a cab riding down the street and its name is Yellow Cab and it's red and gray. But, you know, it is what it is. We're proposing to invest $300 million in building a new hospital on the East End, the United Medical Center, which was built many, many, many years ago. It was originally called Cafritz Hospital. Then it became Greater Southeast Hospital, and then it became the United Medical Center. And what we're proposing to do is to build a new hospital on the East End on the grounds of the St. Elizabeth's East campus. And we're proposing to invest money in a variety of other health programs. The $2.5 million in the Medicaid program, because we don't cover transplants. Is that right at this point? So this will give us a chance to cover transplants. The early periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment program, which is, in my opinion, one of the best programs and best kept secrets also. That really is a great program for our very young children. $250,000 in tobacco cessation programs, and $650,000 in infant mortality programs. When I was a director of DHS, when I came in, the infant mortality rate was described as equivalent to a third world country. We had an infant mortality rate of over 23 deaths per 1,000 live births. Today, and this is a result of work over a period of years, we have brought that down to where it is now 7.4 in the city, which is a huge drop at this juncture. And the one area of the city has actually matched the national average. In Ward 3, there's virtually no infant mortality. On the east end of the city, it has been historically a problem, but Ward 7 is now about where the national average is. We are proposing to increase the temporary assistance to needy family benefits. We'll provide CPI increases in 15 and 16. And then, because it has not been increased since what? Is it the mid-90s, Eric? Mid-90s. We are in 17 proposing to increase the benefits by 46%, which means that it will pick up for all those years where there were no increases. We're not going to make it retroactive, but it will be equivalent then, for example, to Maryland. And then there'll be a CPI increase each year thereafter. In terms of parks and recreation, we're proposing to put almost $2 million into completing the Klingel Trail. It will not reopen Klingel Road, but it will invest in further developing the trail. And $22 million for the full renovation of the Palisades Recreation Center. Will that just be a renovation, or will it be a new one? Yeah, that's pretty expensive for a rec center. Yeah, okay. And we have a new playground down there also. On the public safety and justice front, this will help to fully fund a police force of over 4,000 sworn officers. I don't know whether you all got that propaganda in the mail during the campaign that told that lie that we had reduced by 400 the number of police officers in the District of Columbia. We never reduced by one police officer in the District of Columbia. During the time I've been in office, not one reduction. In fact, we made a commitment, because I think we were around 3,700 when I came in, and we now are at over 4,000. So that was a lie, and people get away with printing lies, obviously, at times, and then publishing that stuff and putting it in your mailbox. We are putting more money into the access to justice legal assistance program. Almost $200,000 to create a mobile library for incarcerated citizens. Almost $300,000 to achieve, for the first time in ever, I don't know if we ever had accreditation. Did we ever have accreditation of the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, Paul? Temporary. It was temporary. And now with the, we had a very good chief medical examiner, but she couldn't achieve accreditation because of some very archaic ways of how that was interpreted. But we have a new chief medical examiner now, and that will get us to accreditation. Putting $1.4 million into our new Department of Forensic Services. For those of you who have not seen the Consolidated Forensic Lab, you really need to go down there and see that. That is down at, what is it, 4th and E, 4th and D? Southwest. In the south. Southwest, yes, southwest. And we're also putting, right, Chief Ellaby, we're putting over $90 million of investments into our fire and emergency medical services. That will continue the renovation of fire stations. We recently reopened two in Ward 3. The Cleveland Park Fire Station on Connecticut Avenue and Palisades. And for those who may be interested, on July 4th, we have committed ourselves to an open house that will start at 10 o'clock. The parade, I think, starts at 11. There'll be an open house of the Palisades Fire Station for an hour, and it really looks great. If you haven't seen it, go by. It really looks terrific, and it's a good place. And then some investments in pumper and ladder repairs for FMES, etc. Public transportation. We have committed to fully funding the Metro commitment that we have of $292 million, increase of $2 million for the school transit subsidy program, $5 million for expanded circulator bus routes, and an additional $25 million for the WMATA Momentum program. And each of Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia have agreed to do that, which obviously will be a total of $75 million, $25 million from each one. I talked about the Metro Access services being provided via taxi cabs already. And these are some other investments we're making from a transportation perspective. $114 million for sidewalks, bicycle lanes, and other pedestrian improvements over the capital improvements plan from 15 to 20. $800 million being invested in streetcars, $41 million to build a circulated garage, and $49 million for the purchase more circulator buses. We have a procurement reform effort that is underway. Is James Staten in here? Oh yeah, there he is. He's our Chief Procurement Officer who is spearheading this effort. This will give more agencies more opportunities to be able to have more control over how they purchase goods and services in their agencies. This will be delegated authority, that there will be people who now work in the central office of the procurement officer who will then be delegated out, much like the CFO does. The CFO, all those staff work for the CFO, but a lot of them are located directly in the agencies, working directly working directly with the directors of those agencies, and this will be a similar model. We also are proposing to continue the city fund, which the notices just went out. I think they just went out yesterday to notify those who are getting funding and those who were not successful. We had about $30 million of applications for about $4 to $5 million of available funding. And it was an incredible, if there's any question about need, this was a prima facie case, because we had well over 300 organizations that applied for these grants, and there were 60, I think 60, 65 that actually got funding, all sorts of nonprofits doing all sorts of things. I talked about autonomy for the District of Columbia earlier. This will help to facilitate legislative and budget autonomy. For the first time ever, we are proposing a director of the Statehood Commission. And one of the things will be to try to direct the effort internally to bring more autonomy to the District of Columbia, and we're proposing to put $100,000 also in the non-personal services side for the statehood delegation that represents us lobbying for statehood for the city. The Tax Revision Commission, I won't go into all of these details, but one of the things we're proposing is a new tax bracket for those who make $40,000 to $60,000 a year. It would lower the tax rate from 8.5% down to 7.5%, which therefore will lower the taxes for those folks. And there are a number of other proposals, and I want to thank Mayor Williams for having agreed to do this. And I think, like us, I think he views this as a multi-year effort. And we will fund those things that we believe in and and then we'll work to fund them over a period of years. The last thing I'll mention is that we always have a wish list in the budget, and we have a wish list. The wish list basically says, okay, we only have so much money, but if we had more money, here's some of the things we would like to do if we had more money. And that includes things like adding 200 more slots for infant and toddlers, increasing the earned income tax credit benefit in the city, providing commercial property tax relief in the city, adding more for the University of the District of Columbia, more money for adult literacy, which we know is a problem, huge problem in the city, as it is in most cities. And then going on to the next slide, reducing the deed and recordation tax assessment and also an offsetting percentage to increase the Housing Production Trust Fund. More money for the summer youth activities, $8.5 million for the Mayor's Scholars Program, and so on and so forth. The rest of these, on the last slide, I won't spend any time on those. You can read those just like I can. But these are 20 proposals that, if we had more money, we would be happy to fund these things. We don't know whether they will be retained in this order or not, and I guess there is a possibility, right, Jeff, that we could get more revenue. I guess we will get more revenue at some point. And some of these things will probably get funded. Some of them probably won't get funded. What order they will appear in at the end of the council's deliberations, I have no idea. But these are our best efforts to be able to order them or organize them the way they are. All right. Why don't we open it up for questions? Comments?
Right here. Hi, I'm Marlene Berlin. I'm Vice Chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Council. And I just want to say that I am absolutely thrilled that you put an additional $25 million into a very non-sexy area, sidewalk maintenance. But that will make this city a lot safer. Mm-hmm. We have many falls, so I just want to say a big thank you.
Thank you.
I hope everybody who wants safe sidewalks to come out to the council hearing to testify on April 29th at 11 a.m. And thank you, John McGaugh, for helping that. Thank you.
And what I'm about to say, I mean as a compliment, and as I know, you don't give compliments easily, so to get a compliment from you, Marlene, means a lot. Maybe I should just quit while we're ahead, right? All right. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'm going to quit while we are ahead, okay? Thank you all very much, and good night.